Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 29, Hippias Minor, Conclusions. Having read the whole dialogue, we may now appreciate that Socrates has been in control the whole time, from the decision he made to keep silent until asked by Eudicus to join the conversation, right up to the very last moment. Socrates has controlled the conversation for his own ends, and those ends appear to be not reputation, not making money, but trying to get Hippias to understand a very small but significant point, that ability is not in itself a good thing. That ability is a good in itself is an opinion held by the many, which Hippias exploits in order to appear to the many to be good. He is able in very many fields. Not only is he able, he is the most able. We should take this at face value. In this dialogue, Hippias represents someone who is most able at most things and therefore appears good to the many. Is there someone in real life with that sort of ability? No. Hippias, the historical figure, was close to it. He was fairly able in a few things. He was a polymath, but certainly not that able at that many things. It's almost as if he's like Socrates in this dialogue, who is that able to control an entire conversation. It's very unrealistic, but this is the case in this dialogue. So we already see there are two characters who are extreme in their ability. One, Hippias, has the ability to do good and bad, to lie and tell the truth in very many technai, crafts, skills, while Socrates has the ability in one techne dialektike, dialectic, the techne concerning dialogue. We may recollect that when justice was treated as an ability, this led to the absurd conclusion that justice could be used for bad ends. The same goes for dialectic. If dialectic is treated purely as an ability, it leads to the absurd conclusion that dialectic can be used for bad ends. While dialectic is strictly the art of conversation, it's conversation with a point. If you know what happens in a conversation, you cannot help yourself but contrast, compare, and reach new conclusions, reject inconsistent opinions, and finally arrive at an understanding of whatever it is you're talking about in the conversation. That's the ideal, at least. If critical thinking and understanding are considered good, we reach the conclusion that dialectic is a techne which necessarily leads to a good end. It cannot be used for a bad end. This is why Socrates is not portrayed as someone with ability in any other field, in any other techne. When he appears to be very good at heuristics or rhetoric, they are actually features of dialectic. Anything to do with talking in a conversation comes to be part of dialectic. Socrates is not associated with bad ends. Socrates is the one who is able to do good. At least he aims at doing good. We see in the dialogue that he never actually does achieve good. He never manages to change Hippias. Hippias always remains concerned with his ability alone as a good thing. And if he had changed, if he had begun to realize that ability was only a means and not an end in itself, we would no longer be able to identify Hippias as the person with ability due to technai for the sake of the ability itself. One of the features of models in ancient literature is that they don't change. If they did change, they wouldn't be models. Since Hippias isn't concerned with the end result is that he is mainly harmful. This is particularly true in his ability as an eristician. Eristics is designed to destroy reason, destroy logic, and it isn't intended to improve any participant in the conversation, but to beat the opposition, where beating the opposition involves the audience laughing at the opposition. Even sophistic education is harmful in that it does not encourage critical thinking. The student thinks that knowledge is simply the opinions of his teacher. Ironically, dialectic, which is involved with finding the truth, allowing a participant to reach the truth which the dialectician already has, the dialectician is required to work with the opinions and expectations of his interlocutor and therefore lies all the time. This is what we see in the conversation. Socrates hardly ever says anything which is true. It is only in this way that the interlocutor has a chance of learning, of realizing mistakes, and beginning to compare and contrast, and reaching some sort of understanding. On the other hand, Hippias, the sophist, can tell the truth a lot. If he really wanted to, he can teach people all sorts of facts, but this doesn't help them begin to think and understand. They simply collect his opinions as if that is knowledge. When it comes to eristics, the sophist lies as much as the dialectician does, albeit with different motivations. Socrates is using eristic tools as a vehicle through which he may make Hippias begin to realize that ability is not an end, while Hippias is using eristics in order to beat Socrates, at least not lose to Socrates, and he's simply doing what the audience requested. As we have seen, the audience consists of aristocrats, rich, young aristocrats, probably young, the ones who are most suited to waste time in philosophy. As we have seen, this conversation has nothing to do with philosophy. The conversation itself is not philosophical. The dialogue is philosophical, and we'll come back to that distinction in a moment. The audience is represented by Eudicus. He too has ability. He has social power, he has money, and as far as he's concerned, he is making Hippias and Socrates have this conversation as a means to display the social status of the aristocrats. Their dynamis, as much power as ability, is manifested in conspicuous consumption, which allows them to appear to be good to the many. Thus we have three degmata of people with ability. Eudicus is a degma of the paradigma of the socially and financially able, exploited to appear good to the many. Hippias is a degma of the paradigma of the technites, the craftsman, whose ability is in craft. But again, this is a paradigma where the ability is exploited to appear good to the many. Socrates is a degma of the paradigma of the dialectician, This paradigma has nothing in common with the two other paradigmata except for ability. In this case, there is no social status, no financial status, no technai to speak of, only the techne, which is not spoken of, nobody knows about it, the techne dialectike. And because of this particular sort of techne, the end is necessarily good. Thus, the ability here is not for the appearance of good, but for actual good. Therefore, this is a dialogue about dynamis, power or ability, how it is and how it appears. And this is something which the dialogue has in common with other dialogues, where a concept is dramatized to show what it is and how it appears. A concept can appear correctly to someone who understands, or incorrectly to the many who don't understand. Ability as it actually is a means to good and to bad. It appears incorrectly to the many as a good thing in itself. When ability is treated as a good in itself, it tends to be used for bad ends. To dramatize this concept and its aspects, Plato required concrete minimalist representations, and these are the paradigmata. But the paradigmata would not appear to be very realistic in a dialogue, and for that reason he creates a dogma from each paradigma. Ability recognized as a means to an end is represented by the paradigma dialectician. The dogma of the paradigma is made to look like Socrates, which means, among other things, that Socrates isn't the historical character. The main thing is that it is the paradigma that is required in this dialogue, with a few additional details such as man, Greek, and so on, to make the dialogue appear a bit more realistic and to help orient the reader, since the historical Socrates has many of the characteristics of this dogma, of the paradigma of the dialectician. The good end aimed at here is not simply to make other people think critically, dialectically, but also to make them realize what ability itself is, that it is a means and not an end in itself. Ability appearing to be a good in itself is represented by two paradigmata, one the social aristocrat and the other the technites, the craftsman. It's because the paradigma is the aspect of the concept simply with concrete representation that explains why the dogmata are so extreme.